Hello, and welcome back to Change Your Life. I'm Dwight Gillespie. I'm your host. This is our podcast, somebody's podcast. Somebody's podcasting right now. Welcome to the YouTube channel. This is Change Your Life, where we give you some practical information and motivation on how to change your life on a daily basis. Just so you know, we upload every Sunday morning between 9 and 11, weather and sleep permitting. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe, like, hit the notification button, share it with your friends, comment down below. We answer all comments, even the nasty ones. So if my sister's out there listening, go right ahead, right below. Tell everybody what an asshole I am. Anyway, I got 4 sisters. One of them really hates me. I think the odds are pretty good, yeah. So here we go. Today, what we want to talk about is there's a great book, and I've read it a couple of times. It's one of my favorite. You talk about self-help. I've read a lot of self-help books for information and for personal knowledge. And one of my favorite ones was by a guy named Miguel Ruiz, and he wrote a book called The 4 Agreements. A famous book, like so many, many people have read it. Some have applied it, and like myself, some try. It's very difficult, right? There's 4 agreements that you come to within yourself, and I want to talk about one of them today. But I'm going to give you the 4. Here it is. I wrote it down, so this is just so you know. I don't have like some twitch or anything like that. I'm reading. It says, "Be impeccable with your word." That's the first one. Very difficult, at least for somebody like me. I'm a born liar, compulsive liar. Many people. In fact, again, if my sister's listening, comment down below. Okay. Don't take anything personally. That's the one that we're going to talk about today, right? Don't make assumptions. Always do your best, right? And I like all of them. The don't make assumptions is great. Like, I won't go for that job. They'll never give it to me anyway. I don't want to ask that woman out. She'd never go out with me. All those things. Like, why bother trying? I'm just going to fail. You're making these assumptions, or you assume that, everything. Oh, it looks, it looks like I could walk across this horrible bridge here in La Paz. Don't make assumptions. You may want to see somebody go across it first. Anyway. Always do your best. That's another one. And that is a given. If you want the most positive outcome, obviously you always do your best. But it's easier said than done. And be impeccable with your word, by the way, is not just about being honest. It's about being honest in your emotions, right? It's people like myself, I have a hard time saying no, or saying no when I mean yes, and yes when I mean no. You want to help me come move on Saturday? Hell no. Yeah, sure. What time you want me there, right? It depends on the friend. And look, saying yes when I mean no has been a problem throughout my life. Do you love me? Yeah, okay. Nah. Sex is good. Anyway, the one I want to talk about today is don't take anything personally, right? This is extremely hard. I can be a very sensitive person, not really the crying type. But we had a discussion with the producer before this. I'm just not the crying type of guy. But not that I've never done it, but it's just not my thing. Anyway, I am sensitive, and I take things personally, even when it's not meant that way. I recently went through a thing with a couple of friends, and I'm going to talk about this because it was very difficult, and I really had to separate from it because I could see kind of what was going on, and I took it personally, and it wasn't really meant that way. These are 2 people that I cared about very much, and I see them going through something that I went through when I was younger, and it was a control thing. And this is just my take on it. This is my take on the whole situation. Is this one particular person is looking to control and separate this other person from everybody else that could possibly be a detractor. And I took it personally, and it wasn't that way because this person, it seems, is being cut off from everybody that they know in an effort to like kind of divide and conquer. I went through this in my own life. In my second marriage, I did it in my first marriage. And I was the subject of it in my second marriage. See, because it'll keep going around, right? Control is like a disease. In my first marriage, I wanted to control every aspect of this person. I met her in a 12-step program, and she was far more involved in it than I was. I met her. I got with her very quickly. and I wanted to control her. So obviously, I made it very difficult for her to go to these 12-step meetings without me. I would question everything she did in there. If she hugged somebody, I would, have you had sex with him? And I didn't exactly put it that way. Why I would ask her why she shared particular things about our personal life, and you're only telling your side. Like, it was all about control, and eventually it just became easier for her not to go at all. I controlled everything. I questioned every friend. Why are you friends with this? I wanted to cut her off from anything or anybody that would have informed her that I was as toxic as I was. And I was absolutely toxic. And obviously so was she. I mean, because you've heard me say it so many times, people. Well people do not find sick people, right? And sick people do not attract well people. Well people find well, sick find sick. And that's why there's so many bad relationships, because there's so many sick people in the world. But my objective was to cut her off from everybody. And she allowed it. Like, she allowed that. For whatever reason, whatever was going through her head. Now, I can only talk for myself, right? In my second marriage, it was the exact opposite. And again, I let that happen out of laziness, right? She was beautiful. Like, she was young. She was beautiful. She told me off the bat how crazy she was. On our first date, she told me, she says, oh, by the way, I'm insanely jealous. I was like, but you're beautiful. Beautiful people aren't insanely jealous. Yeah, they are. Some of them. Beauty does not denote, sanity. That just a little rule of thumb. Just because somebody's hot, man or woman, does not mean they're sane. There was a famous Rodney Alcala, I think his name was. I want to say that. He was on a show called The Dating Game, right? He's a serial killer. The guy was a serial killer. He was on a show called The Dating Game. You can look it up. Rodney, see it, good-looking dude. Good-looking dude. You wouldn't think he would have to murder girls in order to date them, but there it is, so yeah, he believed in real permanent relationships, apparently. Anyway, he says, you're mine now. And he meant it, because I think there was some cannibalism involved as well, which is its own sick nature. We won't get into that. Anyway, the thing is we're talking about control, and I allowed it to happen because I was just as sick, right? So it started out with telling me that she's very jealous, and then proving it, right? And then everything became a problem. She didn't like my family. She didn't like my friends. She didn't like my job, She didn't like. I would have to go home and recount. Now, you have to understand that I worked in the ladies' shoe department at Lord & Taylor, which I believe at the time was the second largest ladies' shoe department in New York City, okay? All right, just to give you an idea. And some of my customers, now this is back in the late 80s, Ann Richardson, who was governor of California, governor of Texas, she had come into the shop. Mario Cuomo's wife, he was governor of New York at the time. She would shop there. I met Cindy Crawford there on one occasion. So I met these people, right? Like, this was the kind of place. It was Lord & Taylor, Fifth Avenue, Manhattan, which at the time, I think they've lost a little of their panache over the years, but at the time, it was a high-end, Saks, Bloomingdale's, Lord & Taylor, like it was up in that pantheon of New York shopping. Bergdorf Goodman was up there. Anyway, I would have to recount every conversation I had with every single woman in a ladies' shoe department in New York City, I dealt with 200 customers a day, and they were all women, Anyway, and I allowed it, and I eventually left that. Well, I got fired, which is another story in itself. It's the only job I've ever been fired from, and I have to say, I did not like the woman who got me fired. And anyway, I'm sure life is getting even with her right now. We won't get into all that. This is the only job I ever got fired from. I quit a bunch, but I never got fired. So anyway, I got cut off from everything, and we had a child together, and that was really the only reason that she was okay with me seeing my family again, was because she loved that child, and so did I. It's one thing we had in common, and he wanted to see his aunts and uncles and cousins, so I would get to go see my family because I had him, and he passed away when he was 7, and so all of that began again, like that. My family became, people, places, and things. She didn't want me around them. She found fault with everything. She found fault with every friend I had, right? And And I did this, and I allowed that to happen. But now, getting to back to this, don't take anything personally, right? Because I'd like to go up over all four of these agreements, my take on them. And by the way, it is a great book. I highly recommend reading it, right? Don't take anything personally. So I'm going through this with my friends, and I love these people. I did. Separately, I had very good relationships with them, and then they got together, right? And they got together. And I could see what was happening, that for one of them, they made it their mission to cut the other one off from everything. This person moved out of state to where this other person lived, away from her family, away from me, away from anybody. And then it became, I could hear it. Didn't like her friends. I don't like your friend. I don't like these people you hang around. I don't like your boss. I don't like this. I don't like that. And that's the control. And it comes from insecurity and all that other stuff. And I mean, I have to talk about this, right? Because that's what it is. You see, but I'm insecure too. And so when I got cut off, now these people are getting, serious about things. And I've been cut out. I've been cut out for whatever reason. And it's very painful. And I took it very personally. Even though I knew what it was about, like I could see it, I've been through it. And again, I'm not judging it because I've been through that. I know what this is all about. This is about you now belong to me. I did it my first one. You now belong to me. You are my property. You get cut off financially, you get cut off physically, you get cut off emotionally, and now you've got nowhere to go. There's nowhere for you to turn, I took this personally. I took this as an affront to me, and it wasn't that way. When I take things personally, they don't work as well. And in the book, Don Miguel Ruiz talks about, no matter what happens to you, this person is coming perhaps from an angle that you don't understand. And that happens often, right? When you're driving down the road and somebody cuts you off and flips you off and says vile things about your mother, right? You take it personally. Well, they don't even know your mother. They don't know you. They don't know anything about you. But you take it personally because the ego gets hurt, And it's very difficult sometimes to separate those things. But when I can, I can take it easy. I got to tell you, in my life, a lot of things have changed. And a lot of the priorities I used to have, I no longer hold. I don't care. I got rid of my TV because I spent too much time watching it and not reading books. I don't care about politics. I haven't watched a news program in 10 years. 10 years I haven't watched a news program because I don't care. Like, it's not that I don't care what goes on. I care about my fellow human beings. I care about my fellow man. I find that today's world is just, it's too much hate, too much vitriol, too many things too many people making things very personal that shouldn't be personal. What's good for people isn't necessarily what's good for a person. Like there's this idea that you have to love everybody and accept everybody and da-da-da. Well, why? Because people get hurt so easily and they take things so personally. I got to tell you something. If you care what I think about you to the point where if I don't agree with you that you'll take your life, you need help. You need some serious psychological help because there's nothing I should be able to say that should put you in a state. And I don't care how underrepresented you are or anything like that. What do you care what I think? What do you care what I say? When you give other people that kind of power, that's when you're taking things so personally. You're giving other people all this power. Like these people, they hurt me, and I was down for a while. And I did a thing on depression, right? And had 4 ways to get out of depression. And I employed those ways because I got to be honest with you. I was hurt. I was very depressed over this. And I had to do the things. And again, I'll get into that really quick just to let you know that the things that I did were very different than the things I used to do when I was young, when I would take these things personally and feel slighted and, be cut off from my family and everything. Instead of speaking up, I would lay on the couch for weeks and I would sulk and people would tell me to, get up, take a shower, go for a walk, put on some comedies and watch, listen to some upbeat music and stuff like that. That is dead and these people hurt me. And I didn't do that now. And what I did was I put on upbeat music. I got up every day. I took a shower. I went for my walk. I did the things that I had to do to come out of it faster. It doesn't mean I'll never get sad, but there are ways, and you can go back and you can look. And we put that one up. It's 4 ways to combat depression. And in there, we also give you information. And God forbid if you don't make a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And really, all problems are temporary, except for death. Death is the only permanent thing that we deal with as human beings. Everything else is temporary. I have great friends 20 years ago that I haven't spoken to in 15 years, and I understand that. And we go through cycles in life sometimes, and sometimes people you love very much are going to fall from your life. Either they outgrow you or you outgrow them, or things happen, right? And I can see these things and try not to take them personally. And after a while, I can come to an understanding with myself that if I'm going to continue to take it personally, I'm going to continue to be hurt by it. And it's not a personal statement. None of this is personal. People are dealing with their own demons. They're dealing with their own things. I have my own control issues. I know what it feels like to try to control somebody. I know what it feels like to be controlled. It's not personal. Like, I know that my ex-wife, the second one, she didn't, maybe she did hate my family, maybe she didn't, but I know that was secondary to whatever it was. The thing was, I don't want you around anybody who can tell you how bad I am. I don't want you to talk to anybody who would tell you, possibly tell you to leave me, right? She has one sister of mine in particular that she can't stand. It took me a long time to figure out why, because that was the sister that gave me a place to go when I did leave. When I did leave, that sister was the one who said, come live with me. Yeah, well, it makes sense. She hates her the most. Why do you hate her so much? Well, I don't know. I can't put my finger on it, but I can. I got it. I know. Yeah, it's because she was the one telling me, get away from her. My other sister telling me, I'll pay for the lawyer. Like, get out. And I didn't want to hear it because at the time I liked being controlled. It was easier. In my life, I was too lazy. It was all these things, and it wasn't until things got to a point where, we were losing the kids and everything. It was a real trying situation. Again, I've done a lot of podcasts on it. But this whole thing about taking this personally, right? If I continue